So I don't know if it makes me a boomer to admit this or not, but I sometimes enjoy watching an episode of Seinfeld. Like the last time I watched an episode of Seinfeld, I was actually just visiting my family, and I was eating some lunch and decided, hey, you know what, let's put something on the TV, and I just defaulted to Seinfeld, because it was really the only decent thing that, or at least thing that I could give a shit about that's on Netflix, because, like, I don't use Netflix. Anyway, point of this video was AI Seinfeld, because when I found out that there is AI-generated Seinfeld, I immediately became interested, because anything relating to AI, I'm going to find interesting to look into and be intrigued, because it is the future. It's already here, obviously, but seeing where technology is going does interest me, because just even like 5 years ago, you could probably say theoretically you could do something like this in 10 years time, okay? Because we did already have the technology for that. It was just a matter of it being accessible to everyone. Now, so much like AI shit is just accessible to anyone that knows how to program it, that, like, honestly, if there isn't a tool that already exists that just lets you make your own AI thing, then it's going to exist soon. And yeah, it is this very easy access to AI-driven stuff, and as well the fact that computers have just been getting more and more powerful over time. That has resulted in, like, the recent Twitch shit that's been going on with Atrioc. But then you also end up with something as silly as this, where it is probably a few, like, chat AIs just generating a Seinfeld script.
How do they keep track of how many hot dogs each person eats?
I guess they have to have some sort of counter. Maybe a referee stands by each person and counts off every time they eat one.
So if I had to guess, how this technology works is you have whatever the environment that is supposed to be Jerry Seinfeld's apartment and then Jerry Seinfeld's stand-up stage seem to be the two static locations while watching this whole show, if we can call it that, which, yeah, even compared to the original Seinfeld show, yeah, there were a lot more locations. So maybe over time, if this keeps being developed a little bit more, because it almost, actually watching this stream, it almost is implied that this could be a whole, like, TV network. Like, you turn on AI NBC, and you'll have Seinfeld, and then you'll have maybe, like, an AI-generated news show, because about every, like, 20 to 30 minutes, you actually end up with the TV guide, which I am pretty sure no one, very few people at least in my generation know what the TV guide is, because of, you know, growing up on the internet and all that. But if you know what the TV actually, wait, no, sorry, I take that statement back completely, because it's on cable boxes now. Yeah, never mind. But what I'm specifically referring to is the actual thing that was called TV Guide. It was I think originally it was like a magazine that got sent out that you would subscribe to or whatever, like all the way back in the 80s. But when I was a kid, it was a actual channel on US airwaves that you could turn to, and it would show you what was coming up on all of the stations. And then obviously that kind of got changed into what cable boxes do now. Yeah, my bad. People, yeah, my bad, my own generation, you know what a TV guide is, because it's not a TV channel anymore. It's actually a feature on cable boxes. Or maybe my generation doesn't know what that is, because we don't watch TV. Maybe there's that too, because I actually forgot that cable boxes existed for a second. Anyway, random tangent. The point that I was making is that the actual broadcast seems to imply that you could attach different programs to this, so it wouldn't be far-fetched for someone to do a derivative thing out of this and be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to take a transcript of the entirety of Friends and make AI-generated Friends. I'm going to make AI-generated Cheers. I'm going to make AI-generated whatever the fuck. You could probably do AI-generated SNL, and it would be SNL. And just attach it to the stream. And I think, honestly, like, you could actually make a pretty niche thing. The channel on Twitch is called Watch Me Forever. It's not just called AI Seinfeld. It is actually called something. And the name of the show is called Nothing Forever. But I think that would be, at a minimum, really fucking interesting to have this very small corner of the internet that just has AI-generated Seinfeld, AI-generated, like, NBC News. Do all of that, where it's the whole, like really make a network, like a TV network from the 90s or 2000s. Really do that, and I think you could actually have a pretty, like, long, like, I think that this would be something that would end up lasting longer than just maybe the month that this thing's going to be popular. Because, like, I don't think AI Seinfeld's going to really stick around for all that long, unless they do something more with it. And, of course, whenever the next generation, to call it that, whenever the next generation of, like, AI chat technology comes out, then you'll probably have a resurgence of AI Seinfeld, just because now the technology behind it is better. But anyway, so I now have a few things I want to just comment on with the show. These were just things I picked up on while watching it. For some reason, the show looks really bad. I'm assuming that it was deliberate, but I also am curious just how much processing power is required to run the show, because you basically need a chatbot for each of the characters of the show. Quick cut, I forgot to actually explain what I meant here. So we can probably guess that there's 4 chatbots, because there's 4 characters in Seinfeld. But the point I'm actually making here is about the power that is needed to produce this, because you still have to encode the video, you still have to stream it, you still have to do all that. So I'm wondering if it would be possible to make the show look a little bit better, because, yeah, to me it really doesn't look all that great. To me, it kind of indicates that this was just a project that someone was able to throw together as really just a project to see if they could do it, and they were able to successfully do it, and then it blew up. So I'm curious if moving forward, if this is something that whoever's behind this does want to keep like evolving a little bit, if they are going to try to make the show look better, because how it currently looks, yeah, I mean, it really does have, as I will talk about later on in this video, a like almost uncanny but not quite uncanny, just for how obviously not realistic it looks. That kind of effect. So, which, actually, now that I think about it, where the fuck is Kramer? Because you have Jerry, you have Elaine, you have Costanza, but where's Kramer? There was, I think, one scene that I saw, I was watching for about 30 minutes, that actually featured Kramer. But 90, maybe 95% of all of the scenes were scenes involving Jerry, Elaine, and Costanza, all in Jerry's apartment. If you're familiar at all with the show, you know that typically you'll have a variety, because, okay, the door is never used. And the thing is, that door is very important in the sitcom, because that's where you will have, like, Kramer just burst in and be like, guys, look at what I discovered. Something like that. Now that I think about it, I don't think he actually says that, but you see my point, is that there's little things like that because they're missing, like, you can see very clearly what is going on. Like, there isn't anything... To say that even the show is uncanny, it's not. It is still on the other side of the uncanny valley. But these are little things that I wish that they would add in, because it would add in more to the formula than literally just having the characters say things that vaguely could be said in Seinfeld.
Wow, did you see that?
See what? What was it?
A bug. It was buzzing around my ear like crazy.
No way. What did you do?
I tried to swat it away, but it was too fast. I just had to wait until it flew away again.
Yeah, but anyway, the whole show looks like it would be something from maybe the Sega Genesis or Atari Jaguar. In fact, it kind of reminds me of this one very random game from, I think it was the Amiga CD. I forget what the actual console's name was, but yeah, it was some really obscure console thing in the mid-90s before PlayStation came out, and then everyone said, alright, yeah, we're just buying a PlayStation. Because to even say that this looks like PlayStation graphics, I mean, nah. Not at all. No, the PS1 typically had much better graphics than what is on display right now in AI Seinfeld. And with that said, the music also is really odd because I know that what probably is going on is just also AI generated, and it's generated live, which, if I'm not mistaken, kind of was actually how the music for Seinfeld was created. You obviously had the one bass line, okay? Like, that was the theme of the show. But then all the other stuff all the other, like, musical accompaniment that would go on during, like, a stand-up routine at the beginning and end of the show. I want to say that was typically made with the show, like, per episode, I think. That's at least my interpretation of it, because it does sound a little bit different to me, if memory serves me right. But it does kind of give me a weird fever dream, because it honestly reminds me of some moments from old Vinesauce streams because of like the ROM corruption streams. Because what would always happen if you corrupted an NES game's ROM or Super Nintendo, it's really with a Super Nintendo actually, is it would corrupt the music and like the, let's call it just the MIDI file, even though it isn't a MIDI file, let's just call it that. It would corrupt that in a way where like music instruments would just break. Like, a sample would keep playing out, or you'd lose an entire layer, like an entire track. And that's kind of what the whole soundtrack for the show sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like that there is any, like, intelligence behind it. It's just, yeah, we're going to use a little bit, like a few snippets here and there, but generally just have a type of thing behind it, because that's every song in Seinfeld.
So last week, I was walking down the street and saw this old lady with a cane.
There were also several times that the stream just stopped working, or I should say the show stopped working. The stream was just fine, but there were several times where it stopped working. Like, I remember that you had a few stand-up bits with Jerry Seinfeld where he just wasn't there. He just was gone, and then what you would have is you'd have the theme playing in the background. Meanwhile, it's just a shot of an empty mic. And I think one time after that happened, you had an empty apartment. And then here's one last weird thing that I picked up on, is even though you can tell that this isn't, like, any high-quality entertainment in the slightest, this is very clearly a gimmick, very clearly a project that someone put together because they got curious, and hey, I applaud that because this thing is interesting to look at for a few minutes. But I was only going to watch this for a few minutes, and I ended up sitting and watching for 30 minutes. An episode of Seinfeld is about that long. Once you factor in all the commercial breaks, it is about 25 to 30 minutes. And yet I was sitting watching this on my phone for almost half an hour. Because there were moments where I was like, alright, I think I've seen enough, I'm going to close out of this, I'll wait another 30 seconds, and then something would happen. And it's like, okay, I'm interested. Because there was something, like, funny that would happen because the program would mess up or whatever. And then I would keep waiting, and then a couple minutes would pass, and I'd say, alright, I'm going to cut it off, and then something would happen. So, yeah, I don't know what to make of that, because this, to me, it seems more like a statement on like TV consumption as a whole, because if you think about it, a lot of media is just stupid and not really, like, it's not exactly like you're watching The Godfather, right? I wasn't setting out to watch some high art film that was going to change my perspective on the world. I was watching a thing that is actually called Nothing Forever. Which, if you didn't know, it's because it's quoting a thing that Jerry Seinfeld once said about his show, where he described it as a show about nothing. isn't that off to say that when I was watching this, I did begin thinking, like, why the fuck am I watching this? And why am I watching a show about nothing? Why am I watching something that has no fucking consequence, that has no storyline? Why am I wasting my time doing this? Yet I'm getting some, like, tiny little amount of enjoyment out of this. And then it just started, like, I just started thinking about so many other things with that. This kind of gave me, not an existential crisis, but it did make me very existential while watching it, while nothing was happening until, of course, Costanza tried to sit down on a sofa. And yeah, this also made me realize how actually pointless Seinfeld really is. Because when you remove the human comedic ability from Seinfeld, you really do end up with a show where nothing happens. Because, like, okay, let's think about it for just a second. Seinfeld is a show that had 9 seasons with it, okay? Not every joke is going to land. Not every joke is going to be amazing, but it is the jokes that did land that people generally think about. There was an episode I was watching that was about, like, a barber that initially started off kind of stupid because you just had Jerry Seinfeld being like, oh, I don't want to get my hair cut. I want to get my hair cut, but not from this person, but I feel bad if I go to another barber because I know this person. And then it just kind of gets absurd the more that you watch the episode, and even though that the like B plot line with Costanza was just pointless, there are moments from that episode that, admittedly, I am going to think about for probably the next couple of years. And then if you think about it, for a show that was made in, really, the 90s, even though it started airing in 1989, but for a show that is about 30 years old now, it's still being used in some memes that are probably also being made by my generation, who was born well after the show stopped airing. So on one hand, while at its core, Seinfeld really is a show that is about absolutely nothing. What the AI really does highlight, though, is the importance of human involvement in any kind of artistic thing. Because without it, you do end up with the occasional funny moments, like when the AI fucks up, but the joke fundamentally is when the AI fucks up. It isn't entirely... there wasn't a, like, coherent joke made by the AI that I at least found particularly funny. Of course, comedy is subjective, yada yada yada, but compared to Seinfeld, where there is that human element behind writing it, even if it was meant to have very mass appeal behind it, again, you can see the importance of having a human writing the jokes. Because, yeah, otherwise the experience of AI Seinfeld really is just like snapshots from a slice of life that has no particular punchline. Anyone ever seen Nichijou? It's an anime that I particularly liked. Imagine just taking the absurdity out of Nichijou, and then now you just have a very boring show. That's why a show like Nichijou works, or hell, probably even, I would say probably even like Lucky Star, or what was that other one? Azumanga Daioh. Because you aren't there for the slice of life, you're there for the comedy. Very elementary things I'm talking about, I know, but that's really what I think this program ultimately demonstrates the most. And yeah, the only other things I have to say about AI Seinfeld are just reiterating the uncanny moments, because this whole thing really does feel so fucking odd, and like something is off, because you know something is off because there isn't a human writing this, it is a computer making this, but everything does feel so weird, even though nothing scary is happening or anything that like uncanny, because again, everything looks like it's from the Sega Genesis or some console from that era, and then like the models start to break down as well, where they start leaning sideways. You have dialogue that doesn't flow naturally. Honestly, the most realistic thing about Nothing Forever was when you would have shots from the exterior of Jerry's apartment and music wouldn't play for 2 seconds, and then you'd hear it come in. Because I distinctly remember this from so many different shows when watching TV years ago. But what you would have between some commercial breaks, and this usually happened, I guess, if the like tech behind the scenes didn't queue up everything properly, or there was still a few seconds of black after the end of a commercial. but you would have a commercial play, and then you'd have maybe 2 seconds where there's nothing on TV, and then it would just cut to the like show, and then you'd hear you'd have something odd, like these little imperfections that strangely then copy over into the show. I think is strangely accurate and also kind of funny, because even the machine can't do the job of the machine. But then on top of that, you also had, of course, like, the flow of any conversation is pretty shit. You have moments where they're just standing as if waiting for action by the director to start acting. And then, of course, as I said before, moments where Jerry just isn't there. And yeah, I really do wonder where the fuck Kramer is, because every scene in Jerry's apartment had George Costanza. I'm pretty sure that there might have been one scene that actually didn't have Jerry Seinfeld in it, but every scene had George Costanza. And then probably 95% of the scenes then had Elaine and Jerry. And then, like, the one time that I saw Kramer in a scene, I don't remember when the hell it was, but the scene started out not even showing that he was in the apartment. It wasn't until it cut to another angle where it's like, oh, who is the... Oh, that's Kramer. Okay, okay. So yeah, anyway, to reiterate, I really would be interested in seeing this thing actually develop a little bit further. Maybe release an update to the software itself that adds in other Seinfeld characters, that adds in other locations, that...
So, Larry, what do you think of the new sushi place that just opened up?
But I think if you were to also copy the format and apply it to other sitcoms, and then even like little mundane things like maybe some commercials, or like NBC News, because I know that Seinfeld originally aired on NBC, really make an AI-generated NBC. I think that would be really cool. Because the last thing I'm going to now say is that you do have the possibility of having 1,000 monkeys writing on typewriters and then eventually writing Shakespeare. So there absolutely could be memes that come out of this. There already probably are that I just haven't seen yet. But I think that to really develop this into a interesting oddity on the internet, you should probably do more than just Seinfeld. I think that you should expand this to other things because the technology is there. Clearly whoever already programmed this has the ability to also replicate this with other things. So I think it's only a matter of time, really, for whoever is running Watch Me Forever to add in other shows. Right, I'm going to end the video here, but before I do that, I want to give a shout out to my friend Luke, because he has started making videos on his channel, and he has been making them regularly. So I want you guys to show him some love. He has just made 2 videos on War Thunder over the past 2 weeks, and he tells me that in the next couple days he's going to be releasing a new video on a horror game. We'll find out what that is once it comes out. So check out his channel, subscribe to the Absolute Problem YouTube channels. I'm out.